Emily, welcome to the Calm Mom podcast. So grateful for the time you've made to spend with us this morning and teach us and pour into us. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So we're going to talk about screen time today. And you know more than I do that that's a hot topic for all of us parents. And we all have questions and we're all trying to find the sweet spot. So I'm
That's
so
exactly
curious
right.
to hear your thoughts on it. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. Like, how did you come upon this work? Was it just kind of, a research of necessity, raising your own children? Was it something you've always kind of been in this tech space? Like, tell me a little bit about how this came to be for you.
Well, it's kind of a combination. I was a teacher actually for 12 years. So I spent 12 years teaching middle school. And in that process, I was in the classroom 2003 to 2015.
Okay.
Excuse me. So it spanned quite a range technologically, shall we say? Because when I first started, none of my students had phones. Like, one kid might have had a flip phone and was totally embarrassed because their mom was overprotective. Then what really happened, and a lot of times people think that this started because, it was like kids using phones and social media, but actually as a teacher, my first introduction to sort of the role that technology was playing in kids' lives was as a teacher. I was being asked to upload assignments, post grades on this like portal. And what I noticed immediately was my 7th grade students stopped coming to talk to me. They wouldn't ask, why did I get this grade? They would go to the portal and they were being told to do that. They were being told. I was like, what? This is all the skill stuff. And then at the same time, so this is around like 2011, 2012, kids were coming into the classroom, like, all the drama of the weekend would come in Monday morning, but it was changing. And it was things like, oh, so-and-so posted pictures on, it was Facebook at the time, but like I was left out and there was this party and I wasn't invited and somebody tagged me in this, but not in that. And I was like, what is happening? So we started talking and I, did the like, hey kids, when you're online, you should be nice. This was really new at the time. I mean, this is over 10 years ago. Yeah. And my students were the ones who were like, Emily, it's our parents. Our parents are online. Our parents are scrolling through social media. Our parents are texting and driving. And I had this light bulb moment like, oh, this isn't a kid problem. This is an adult problem that's impacting children. And of course, flash forward, through the pandemic and all that. And we have a very different landscape with tech. I think a lot of people assume kids just have it now. And we have to remember this is less than 10 years old. Like this has not been the norm, but it's rapidly changed a lot of things and many not for the better, I would argue.
For sure. And not only is it not the norm, but or this is the norm now, or we think it's the norm, or we're trying to figure out what the norm is. We don't even really have an understanding on the long-term impacts, right? Because we just don't have the data.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I will say that we are getting early signs, or I should say early confirmation of what we had worried about were red flags. I mean, you can look at Jonathan Haidt's book, An Anxious Generation. You can look at the Surgeon General's warning. We're moving from correlation into causation, where there is a connection between how much time, for example, teen girls are spending in social media and their mental health. Yeah. Now, of course, there are lots of factors at play. And I always say to parents, like, this is unprecedented. Like our parents never dealt with this. This is a completely new phenomenon. What isn't new is that parenting is hard and always has been. Mm-hmm. What isn't new is child development. Same, always the same, has been. I mean, it doesn't change as quickly as technology, let's just say.
Yep.
And the ways in which we figure out how to help our kids is untested. And so I tend to realize that this is not, the way I phrase it to parents is, it's not your fault that things are this bad. Some people like to blame parents.
Yeah.
I would say it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility. Yeah. We have to get informed about it. We need to think about our use and we need to make different choices, because when we know better, we do better. So that's kind of the approach I take. It doesn't help to shame parents into doing different things, because no one wants to do things because they're being shamed.
No, exactly. And we all care, right? It's like we're all really trying to do our best in raising our kids.
Exactly.
I love that. And I love the mindset that you kind of bring to it. And I kind of want to start there, because I think a lot of us have an understanding that there need to be some boundaries and parameters around screen time in our homes. And we could get into all like the nitty gritty and the age, groups and all like the school and all that stuff. And I want to get into some of that. But before we do, I would love for you to invite some people to kind of just shift how they're thinking about screen time, overall? Because I think it can be something that feels really rigid, right? Or we see what someone else is doing and we're like, I need to start doing that. And it's like, maybe if we zoom out a little bit and just change how we approach it altogether, we might find more success.
That's exactly right. And, I think really an important thing for us as parents to consider is how much our own consumption of media and social media tells us what we're doing wrong as parents.
Feel like an itch on my back as you're saying. I'm convicted every time.
And so actually my starting premise and every talk I give, it's in my book, I write about this idea of replacing judgment with curiosity, because I always joke parenting's the judgiest sport I've ever played. I mean, pick a topic and there's someone with a strong opinion about how you're doing it wrong.
That's right.
And screen time is at the top of the judgy list. And so I think it's very important, look around. Like, even if you have more than one kid in your house, they're not the same. They don't need the same things. They don't react the same way. So you can't look at all parents and say, well, they're doing it this way. Why isn't it working for me?
Yep.
You have to figure out what works for you. So what I invite parents to do, I have a definition of I use the word tech intentional. So I talk about, I'm not anti-tech. I'm tech intentional. My kids do have screen time. My 16-year-old does have a phone. I talk a lot about how we use it. And I'm going to give you the TLDR, because if I give you the long definition, it's kind of wordy. But the TLDR, and this is what I think helps parents, is that later is better, less is more, relationships and skills before screens. That's it. I think, to me, if that's the framework through which you're parenting, it can look like a lot of different things. Yeah. And so I don't know if you want to unpack those a little bit, but
yeah, I would love to.
Less is more. So I often get asked, well, how much is too much? Give me a number. How many hours a day? But the thing is, like, we all know that scrolling through TikTok is completely different than watching a documentary about whales, right? It's not the same thing. So I can't give you 6 hours as a limit or whatever time frame, because it's not the same. So less is more is just going to be that the younger the child, the less screen time, the better. And this is protective. There is data to back this up, that young children especially, and I'm talking under 5, need almost none. I mean, need none, but really need to stay away as much as possible.
Can you talk to us a little bit about why that's so? Like, what is it about their development? Yes. What is it about their brain?
Yes, because it's such prime brain building time. And one of the things that's so important to understand about digital tech is, and I hear this all the time, well, I watched TV when I was a kid and I turned out fine. TV is not TV anymore. No. I mean, I think this is a really important distinction. When you watch TV, and I'm dating myself here, but it was like Thursday night at 8:00, we would wait 1 week to watch one episode. And that is not TV anymore. Yeah. The other thing is that kids aren't watching TV. They're playing video games or scrolling through YouTube videos. It is not the same. So we can talk about duration and content and pacing and all of the ways in which it's different. Yeah. But the most important thing in my mind is that parents have to understand that the design elements of the apps, of the shows, of the, games that they play are intentionally manipulative. Yeah. That they are literally, tech companies hired a developmental psychologist to make their product as addictive as possible. And what I say to parents is, it is not a fair fight. Yeah. It is not you versus your child. It is you versus a hijacked neural pathway, and you will never be better than dopamine, right?
Yeah, I know. Even seeing I don't want to say rage, because it's not rage, but like the disgust maybe that my kids have with commercials when they the internet's out and they're like trying to watch regular TV and they're like, what is this?
Oh, I totally have had the same experience, like in a hotel, and they're like, why do we have to watch this? Like, can you fast forward? Or we don't even say fast forward, right? Just skip it. No, skip
it. Yes.
But that's it. Like, even that, but you think about small things like these little design features, the fact that we have to you used to have to click play next episode. Right. Now it auto plays. That is intentionally designed so that we continue watching. And I mean, how many of us are guilty of watching multiple episodes? We were just going to do one, like that happens. So that's less is more. And, it gets a lot more complicated as kids enter school. I do want to acknowledge that there are 2 elephants in the room here. It's the student and children's personal devices and access, but it's also the school tech. Yeah. And that's a huge part of the activism I do is around school tech. I think it is right now being used in very developmentally inappropriate ways. And it's just tech for tech's sake.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people will blame COVID for the fact that
Okay.
kids are using so much tech in schools, but I've actually been in this activism since 2018. So this is predating COVID. We were very concerned about the rise of, for example, ed tech tools. So that could be software, it could be learning management systems, it could be educational quote unquote games, anything that involved computer and or internet. And I am, again, not anti-tech. I absolutely believe there is a place for technology in education, that children need to have incredibly, especially today, incredibly important skills like media literacy, differentiating mis and disinformation, citing accurate sources, plagiarism, and typing.
Yeah.
Typing. But what's happening is we are getting iPads given to kindergartnens in the name of 21st century skills. And that is not only not true, that those are not the skills that children are needing to be successful, but it's also developmentally a complete mismatch. And so, I get especially upset about the K-5 screen 1-to-1. And I would say most schools at this point have moved to 1-to-1, which means one child to one device. It used to be, you had a computer lab or a cart, a laptop cart or something. I want to go back to that because to me, that's an incredibly intentional use of technology. You have to make an effort to get there. You're using it for a specific purpose. So there's lots of problems with the ed tech that are similar. In fact, what I say is ed tech is just big tech in a sweater vest because it's the exact same business model. Wow. So right now, and I think I'm a little bit ahead of the curve on this because I've been paying attention to it for so long, but like right now, people are really concerned about phones in schools. They should be 100% no business being in schools. I agree with that. But if you're going to ban phones, but kids can access YouTube and play video games on their school issued tech, I mean, what's the point, right? You have to do both. And so there's a movement. I mean, I'm definitely very much involved in that part of it. But I think I would just say here to parents listening, if you're at all concerned that your child is spending too much time on a school computer or iPad or bringing it home and using it for non-school related things, or even spending too much time on it for school related things, you're right to be concerned. And I've actually created a toolkit to help parents opt out. And so I'm doing that with my own child. She doesn't take the laptop. I refused it. I just said, no, she's in 7th grade too. So I was like, we'll find a way around this. And it leads into a lot of other challenges because, I hate burdening teachers more. I am a teacher. And so I'm very aware of that. But I feel like in order to change the conversation, we have to, kind of put parents out there who are, exactly.
Yeah. So, I think that's so wise. Okay. So less is more. And I totally get and appreciate not giving these like hard numbers of this is what we should be shooting for. But I get that doesn't make sense. I would love to offer a takeaway to the parents listening on how to approach this conversation with their kids. If it's been unrestricted free time or it's been like whatever it is on screens, like how do you start to introduce them to this idea that less is more and we're going to have, parameters around this?
This is a great question. And one of my favorite phrases that I learned from a parent educator years ago is this: I forgot to teach you. It's so disarming.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah. And it takes, because parents know that as soon as we talk about screen time, our kids' hackles go up, they get defensive, we get reactionary. Like, I get it. I mean, it affects us as too, right? But if we can just say, hey, I just learned something and I didn't know this before, or I forgot to teach you that your brain needs some downtime when it's not looking at a screen. And, again, I definitely caution parents not to pull the Band-Aid off all at once. I mean, there are circumstances where that's necessary, but like it's baby steps. And so for parents to start actually looking first at their own screen use, I think is actually a far more effective way to get everyone to change. And it doesn't mean you don't get to have a phone. I mean, I know adults will say, oh, it's my work tool, it's my alarm clock.
We have all
First of all, oh my gosh, exactly. And also alarm clocks are so much cheaper than phones. You can not doom scroll on an alarm clock. So, like start with some of those low hanging fruit things that you can model for your kids and just say like, I'm willing to make some changes too, because I know it's not good for me as an adult, which means it's even less good for you as a kid with a growing brain.
Okay. I love that. All right. So less is more. And then what was the second one?
Later is better.
Later is better.
Is again, I guess less is more about total quantity. Later is better is more about age. And Again, it depends so much on the kid, right?
Okay.
So rather than, again, a total number of, I guess I'm sort of blending these two in the moment, but like right now, I think it was Pew Research just found last year that the average amount of time that kids are spending on screens and between 8 and 18 years old is 7.5 hours a day.
Wow.
Outside of school time. So if you do the math, how many hours are left in the day and what are those hours spent
Yeah, if
for?
you're sleeping for 8 hours, 8, 10 hours.
One hopes,
Right?
right?
At least,
And we know that teenagers are often cutting sleep out, right? And sleep is that low-hanging fruit. I mean, again, sleep is the thing that makes a difference on everything else. So the reality is like, kids are all probably, it's a little bit like this. And I'm quoting, actually, Devorah Heitner talks about this. Like, I wish there are some parents who worry way too much about a smaller amount of screen time. Yeah. And there are a lot of parents who worry not at all or not enough about their kids' huge amount of screen time. And it's like we need to spread that out a little bit, and I don't like fear mongering. I don't, I think we worry about time, but I also think there's other safety considerations to talk about that are definitely making headlines now in terms of predators and porn and violence. And, I always say to parents, it's not a question of if the kids see it, it's when.
Wow.
And so, that used to be one of the things I'd say to parents is like, well, you give your kid a phone when you're ready for them to see porn. Most parents are like, oh, I would never do that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Your kid isn't even necessarily going to look for it. It's just going to be there. It's pushed into the algorithm. It's, a Google search gone wrong.
Yeah.
And so those are the conversations we're going to have in a very new way. That's a difference for this parenting generation, is like to have that porn conversation. I mean, that is new.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but the most important takeaway, I mean, we really want our kids to come to us when they see things that they don't understand, that are confusing or scary. That is the most important thing.
Yeah, even with the news, like I'm just thinking, we're recording this a week before the election. Like we just started homeschooling, and I'll like bring up YouTube. Like we're studying constellations right now, and like I brought up a YouTube video, and before it started, it was this ad about some hot topic, and I'm like, I don't want my kids to even hear this, but it came up.
Exactly. And, I would call that a teachable moment. Like, there's a media literacy opportunity. Like, why is there an ad before something we're trying to learn about stars? Like, why does YouTube need an ad, right? Because it's free and that's how they make money. And so they need to sell ads, which makes us want to watch it longer. And maybe that's an opportunity to explore other resources that aren't ad-based. Yep. That's what we talk about the high cost of free a lot too. Like, free apps are often far more problematic, at least in terms of their ad content, right? Yeah. So pay the couple dollars if your kid, I mean, again, I'm not recommending this, but I call this choices within choices, right? Yeah. So it's like, if they're going to play a game, do the paid version where there's no ads. You need to go in and manually change it so that they can't chat in the app. Like none of the safety settings are default most safe, of course. Sure. And I am going to, I'm going to say, the crux of the problem, both for the school tech and the home tech, is that companies make money off of advertising, and advertising keeps us on longer. Mm-hmm. Their business model is fundamentally at odds with child development and what makes things safe for kids. So do not be fooled by they're rolling out these new parental controls. First of all, that puts burden back on parents, which makes me so angry because, as I said, it's not your fault that these are addictive, but it's our responsibility to understand it. So if the tech companies wanted to design these things differently, they could. They choose not to. Mm-hmm. So don't be fooled by their, like, oh, look at us, we're doing this good stuff. It's only, look at the news, look at the other buried headlines. It's because they've been sued. It's because there's some new law, and that's only the only reason they're doing it. Yeah. And full disclosure, I'm married to someone who works in the tech industry. So I am always very upfront about that because I'm literally married to the problem. And, we talk about it all the time, but also like, I get it. You have to support your family too. So it's like, I'm trying to think of this as a company and not individual people who need to have jobs.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's complicated. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And it's available. And then, like you said, it's our responsibility.
And it's behooves us as parents to understand how this works. The fact that tech has changed. I mean, even just think about the internet itself has changed so much. We didn't even mention AI yet, right? Like, Google searches are not what Google searches were 10 years ago. And so I think we as adults kind of don't remember that as much, or we don't notice that. But for kids, it's really different. I mean, I had a parent absolutely not believe me when it was a parent of older kids. He's like, kindergartners don't have iPads. And I was like, no, literally kindergartners are coming home with iPads. And I have a photo my friend sent me of all these kindergartners on the playground before school started. The time that they're allowed to like free play, where you would want kindergartners to run and play.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting on the concrete, all looking at their school iPads. So a parent could be doing everything right. Yeah. A parent could say, we don't have tech, individual tech at home, or we just do family movies sometimes, like, which I love, by the way. Family movies are great. But like, if your school's sending, like, you can't do anything about that as a parent. And it's wrong. I mean, I fundamentally believe it's wrong. And I will say the one exception is for a documented learning disability.
Okay.
That is the exception. Like, that has to be a doctor prescribed, not the rule. Because what's happening is we're saying one kid needing eyeglasses does not mean the entire class needs eyeglasses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What are some good ways for parents to start having these conversations with their their kids' teachers or the administration? Like, what kind of things should they be asking about, curious about? How do they, like you did with your daughter's laptop, or like saying, we're not going to be doing this, thanks, but no thanks. How do you start approaching that?
So I mentioned I've created a Unplug EdTech toolkit. Okay. And in that I have a list of questions that parents can ask their teachers. And, the same thing applies in my mind that, I just believe this as a human, that like civil discourse matters, being respectful matters, replacing judgment with curiosity matters. So oftentimes teachers are between a rock and a hard place. I would say the majority of teachers have concerns about this, but not a lot of choice or freedom. There's some younger teachers who probably in the last 10 years, if they've gone through college and grad school, have been sold a much more powerful argument for tech. And so I don't even blame them. One thing I think is a really good question to ask is, can you show me the research that shows the benefits? Because right now what's happening is we're having to defend why it's bad. Yeah. And I want to see schools defend why it's good.
I love that.
And there is not a lot. And here's the clincher though. It has to be non-industry funded research. And this is, really, really important because if you're, Meta has plenty of research that will tell you why you need to have Meta products in your classroom or whatever. I'm picking on Meta for the moment, but like, that's not unbiased. Yeah. That's not, evidence-based, peer-reviewed, good quality. So that is incredibly important. And, to trust your gut and ask questions. Just tell me about how we use tech in the classroom would be a starting point. Okay. About how long is my kindergartner using the iPad each day? I would say from K to 5, I would refuse to let it come home. Okay. Just say, no, my kid's going to leave it at school. That would be a starting point. Yeah. Some parents are going to go, I don't want any of it. Yeah. And that's okay too. Like, I think that is a strategy. One of the biggest pushbacks that I hear is about standardized testing, that's how they're done now is on the computer. But that like 10 years ago when my son entered kindergarten, the very first day of kindergarten, he came home with a piece of paper that said he had to learn Control Alt Delete. I was like, he's 5. Like, he's not even writing his name, but I have to teach him Control Alt Delete. And the only reason was for the standardized testing. So what on earth are we doing testing 5-year-olds on computers when they don't even have that's the thing, right? That's the point 3 that I'm talking about is skills before screens, right? Yeah. Like, so you're going to get pushback for that, which is actually very interesting because the opt-out movement, when we talk about opting out of tech, which is what I'm sort of advocating for right now, opt-out used to actually be applicable. It was about testing, that parents who refused the testing. And so there is already a movement of parents who've refused the testing. And I do that for the most part. And I think that's actually how the house of cards will start to fall. Because if you're like, my 5-year-old, first of all, I don't want them taking the standardized test. It doesn't do anything for my child. Right. And secondly, on an iPad or computer, are you kidding me? That's completely out of alignment with development. Right. Yeah. So I think that that's a thing for parents to be aware of, that may be the hitch And if that's the response from the school, it's like, well, then I'm opting them out of the testing.
Yeah. I would assume, and I would love to hear how it went with your daughter, that for a lot of parents, especially of older children, even like third, fourth, fifth grade, they would get pushback from their kids, and the whole thing,
Yes.
like, I'm the only one, or this is weird, like,
yes.
whatever it is that kids would bring up.
Totally to be expected.
We're the parents, and yes. And
yes.
what are some, good strategies to approach that conversation when everyone else seems to have it except for me?
Yeah. And I think there's another possibility here. And it depends a lot on the kid, depends on how they're, I do worry about retaliation from teachers or, resentful teachers. That is a risk. I kind of hope too that some kids are gonna be like, oh, she gets to do it on paper. I want to do it on paper. I'm sick of doing it on the computer. Like, I actually think that's a possibility too. Oh. So, but to answer your question, how do we talk about it with our kids? Again, I mentioned that I forgot to teach you, but I think the other thing is like just saying like, I'm learning a lot about this, and, I am going to have to think about my own fears about, what does it mean to be successful in school, and what's important, and what does learning look like? Yeah. And I actually kind of wonder, like, maybe you don't need to bring the computer home. I mean, again, especially K-5, but like, you're right. Like that third, fourth, and fifth is where it gets a little trickier. I would just baby step it. Just be like, I actually think that maybe for homework, I don't want to necessarily tell parents don't do the homework, because that could cause a different problem. But there's also research that homework doesn't necessarily do anything. Yep. Reading, that's the best thing you can do for your kids. Yeah. Read to your kids, read with your kids, have your kids read a real book, not on a screen. Yeah. Period. Yeah. You want to raise smart and successful people, read. That's it. And the problem is, then you hear there's a very nuanced thing here, which is this idea that ed tech is not the same as tech ed.
Yeah. Right.
So technology education is learning about the tech, learning how to type, learning like how to do research.
Things like that.
Yes, exactly. Things that are very tech specific even, or sound design, or, whatever. Like, those are amazing things that children could be exposed to.
Yep.
But that's tech ed. But ed tech is saying, well, just put everything on technology. Let's learn to read on technology. Let's do math on technology. Why wouldn't we? We have it. Like, lots of schools have spent millions of dollars on it. Mm-hmm. But that's not that's the difference between, right? We're talking about curriculum and pedagogy, right? Like, curriculum is what you teach. Pedagogy is how you teach it. And there is very little to no evidence that, especially for young children, learning to read, and again, the exception being those documented learning disabilities. Like, if your child is being taught to read on an iPad, there is absolutely no business for an iPad being there. Same with math. And in fact, there's plenty of research about the tactile, three-dimensional, hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills.
It activates a different part of our brain.
Exactly. Yeah. And it encodes the learning differently. And it's, again, that's how we learn through that messy, tactile, three-dimensional stuff. And I love talking to occupational therapists, because they're like, it's terrifying because of what they're saying, but like, they used to work on things like handwriting, right? 10 years ago, even. Now it's teaching children to turn the pages of a book. Children don't know how to turn pages of a book, which we don't even think of as a skill.
Right.
But because they lack some of that fine motor stuff, because they're not getting it, because they're spending so much time on the tech, it's a lot. Yeah. And if we know kids are doing 7 hours a day outside of school, they have no business being on it at school, right? Like, that's the protective thing for the kids whose parents aren't paying attention at home. Yeah. All the more reason to cut it back at school. So the wave is coming. I'm very optimistic, because I feel very passionately about this. I know it's what's best. That's the other thing I would say to parents debating this. Yeah, your kid might not feel super included, or you might be frustrated. First of all, that's normal. It's also developmentally healthy to have some friction and discomfort.
Yep.
And I also think you have to think you might be doing them the biggest favor of their lives.
Yeah.
Because you're protecting their brain. You are protecting those neural pathways in a way that I think tech interferes and impedes.
Yeah. And I think it kind of rolls into what's the culture of your home. Because like, I know for us, one of our family values is that counterculture is our culture. So it would almost be expected that, like, you're just not going to be doing what everyone else is doing.
And that's
the first time.
I think we talk. So actually, in our house, and my daughter is uniquely comfortable with being unique, is what I say.
Beautiful.
And part of it is this metaphor that I've been using, and I write about it in the epilogue. Is when imagine a school of fish in the ocean, swimming. How does a school of fish change direction? Well, it takes one fish to peel away, but actually in order for the whole school, and yes, it's called a school of fish, in order for the whole school to peel away, you actually need that second and third fish to follow. And so what I talk about in our house is that we're first fish. We're peeling away first, but we need our second and third fish too.
Yeah.
And so some parents are going to be the ones who opt out completely. And then maybe they're going to be some second and third fish who are like just asking the questions. We need all of them. I mean, again, like this isn't a one size fits all solution, whether it's home tech or school tech, because kids aren't widgets. They're not standardized. They need different things. And advocating for our kid is important, but I think advocating for all kids because it's better for all kids is important too.
Yeah. Okay. So good. I love that. We're first fish.
Yes. Woo. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then the third one is skills before screens. Is that how you say it?
So skills or relationships before screens, or I should say. So, when I talk to the schools, I tend to focus more on the skills part, but actually we know that learning happens in the context of relationships. And, there is plenty of research about learning, right? Like, and this is another really important distinction, I think, is that like tech provides us information. It doesn't provide us knowledge. Knowledge is the experience of taking information and creating meaning out of it.
Yeah.
And that is going to happen because we're inspired or supported or mentored or nurtured by a trusting, educator or teacher or parent.
Yeah.
And tech will never be able to do that. And yes, AI, in fact, this morning, someone sent me an article about AI in preschool, how to incorporate it into the preschool classroom. And I am here to tell you that, if you want to do like a little demo for 5 minutes and show kids something cool, go ahead. That is not going to bother me. But do not tell preschool teachers to incorporate artificial intelligence into the classroom. Wow. Preschool teachers should be giving them messy, tactile, sensory bins and blocks, books, and outside time. That's it. Yeah. And, part of the problem here is there's no money in that, right? Like there's no money in telling parents to put their baby on the floor and let them explore their world. That's the best thing you could do for your baby.
Yeah.
There's no money in that. And so, again, we're up against both the capitalistic model, but also our own social media pressures and, feelings of like, am I a good enough parent? Yes, you are. I'm here to say you don't have to be a perfect parent. You just have to be a good enough parent, and that's been a mantra for me, as a parent. And it's taken, again, my kids are 16 and 13. It's taken a lot of time for me to be like, okay, we did some things right, not all, but some. And that's what matters, which is to the third point, the relationships first, right? Like what I know is that my kids will come and talk to me, or sometimes I have to ask them, but they'll respond. Mm-hmm. Do I fight with them? Yes. Do we argue about screen time? Yes.
Real life.
But yes, it's real life. And, and I want to say too, to parents, like, when I work with parent clients too, is like to remember that child development, puberty, adolescence, all of that is still the same. It is very normal for a tween or a teen to be so rude to you. Yeah. It sucks. It doesn't feel good, but it's normal.
Yeah.
What's different is that the tech is embedded and it's so hard to pull out what is tech-based, what is influenced by tech. Yeah. That's just normal tween. Yeah. And so it becomes, which part of it do we react to? So going back to the relationship, right? Like part of it, it's both of us, right? It's not just that our kid is doing X, Y, or Z. It's how we respond to them too, right? So it's like, when they get mad and upset, I have another great parent educator quote that I love this one. We don't have to accept the invitation to every fight we're invited to, and it's like, boy, do teens offer you a lot of invitations. And that is on us to control our own nervous system to the point where we say, I decline the invitation to fight about this. Yeah. I'm going to go in the other room. And when we're feeling calm, we'll talk about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I think with tech in particular in the teen years is when it is so painful and destructive to the relationship. And yet it's also the most important time to protect it. you know, to fight for the relationship. And sometimes, and I'm going to say this out of personal experience, I will say there was something about going from 15 to 16 that totally shook my world. And I've worked with some parent clients who've said some similar things, which is like you know how they say like third grade is when you move from learning to read to reading to learn. I feel like 15 to 16 is like learning to parent and parenting your teen to learning to be the parent of a teen. Like it's this, it's almost like, actually, again, I had another wise parent educator. I've got some good people in my corner here who told me, he was like, Emily, you're done. You've done everything. You've laid out the values. You've modeled what you want. You've exposed him to new experiences. Now you're there to hold the space for him. And it's his world to navigate. And it was like, you know, I don't mean digital world. I don't mean let him go free on the internet. It was like, let him make his own mistakes. Let him advocate for himself, because that's now setting him up for the adulthood. And it's very bittersweet. It is very bittersweet. And it's not easy. But I would rather preserve my connection to him so that when he's older, I know he'll come back. I know he'll want to talk to me. I know, you know, and that's not how I thought it would go.
Wow. Sweet. It's like bittersweet, right?
Exactly.
I want to give you the floor for the last comment, encouragement, light bulb moment. What's something maybe we haven't touched on yet that you think the mamas listening need to hear?
Okay. My favorite parenting tip is this idea of living your life out loud. And I get asked a lot, like, you know, what parental controls, what apps, none of it. You don't need any of it. And I mean, okay, side note, if you have it and it works, fine, keep it, but don't waste your time on that. Focus on the relationship. And by living your life out loud, what happens is you're narrating what you do as you do it. You can do this if you're a mom of a 16-year-old or a 6-year-old. I pick up my phone, I'm looking at it, I'm looking at what time the soccer game starts, how long it's going to take me to get there, what the weather is. I'm going to text your friends, see if they can give you a ride home. It's a play-by-play. And it's the mundane and the boring and the logistical. That's the first layer. And if our kids are like looking at us like we have two heads, that's even better because we know they're listening. Then what we get to do is layer on the emotional piece. I'm bored and I'm standing in line at a coffee shop and I'm scrolling through Instagram and all these pictures are making me feel like my kids don't have it, you know, whatever. And our vacation isn't as good. And now I'm feeling bad about myself and there's no end to this feed and I could just scroll forever and that's not really fun. Adding in that emotional layer helps our kids see that impacts us too. Plus, we can also layer in the executive function part. I'm using this as a tool. I always say to kids like this, to parents, when kids look at this, they only see the back of it. They don't know what we're doing on it. But we need to help them see that it's a Swiss Army knife, not a switchblade. It's a multi-tool. So when we live our life out loud, we do that. That's an adult change. That's something we can do as adults today. And our parent partners and other people who take care of our children. Then the idea is that the kids will start to do it too. And there's the accountability. There's the way we're using it. And even last night in my own house, this happened. I was like, my daughter went for the iPad and I was like, we got in a fight. And I was like, I'm frustrated because you just turned it on. You didn't explain what you were doing. It's really late. You know, you need to get in bed. We don't do iPads before bedtime anyway. All of this. And it was like, you need to live your life out loud. You need to account for your choices here. And so anyway, that's the point I would say to leave with you. And okay, one more. I share a phone with my daughter. She's 13. We share my phone, which has been a fascinating experience. So I just say that because a lot of times parents feel like, when do I get my kid a smartphone? If your kid's school has a phone-free policy, your job is 100% easier. And that's what our situation is. But she can text her friends from my phone or from the iPad because it shares the number. And it feels like she has some of that autonomy. But we also have had some pretty amazing conversations, which to me builds the relationship, right? And it only works because it's for both of us. There's a trust and a conversation that's happening. And it's not perfect. And let me tell you that group texts in 5th grade were just a nightmare. So any 5th grade parents out there whose kids are on group chats, oh my gosh, I think we got 130 messages in 20 minutes. Like it's that bad. And 99.9% of it is Who is this? Whose number is this? But I could have said to my daughter, this is so annoying.
Yeah.
I didn't have to say a word. She came up to me and was like, can you believe this? This is awful. I don't want to be in this. She came to that conclusion herself. So sometimes we have to let the kids come to it. Again, within the safety parameters. I don't mean go free on YouTube, but like that was a teachable moment for her. So,
wow.
And to not give hope. I mean, I know I've said some scary statistics and it seems dire out there, but it matters. And every single parent has the potential to be a first, second, or third fish. Yeah. So wherever your comfort level is, what are your first fish or second fish moments that you can do to advocate for your kid and other kids?
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. So as you guys are listening, think about it. Like Emily was talking about, what are the baby steps what's, something that you can start approaching your child and being like, hey, I forgot to teach you this. Right. And it's not too late for any of these things. I love your approach.
Exactly.
Okay. The toolkit, we'll link it in the show notes.
Awesome.
And then let everyone know where else they can find you and connect with you and continue to learn from you. Yes.
And I have a book that came out in January. It's called The Screentime Solution, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech intentional family. And so I hope the tone of this interview is very much like the tone of the book. And that's available everywhere books are sold. And I always put a plug in for your independent bookstore because I love those. Ironically, I am also on social media. I do have a team that helps me, so I'm not the only one posting, but Instagram is probably my most commonly posted place, but I do post in other spots as well. And actually, the thing I think that would be most helpful if you want to kind of get a feel, especially around the school tech stuff, is to sign up for my newsletter, because I write weekly essays about school tech and what parents need to know and what parents can do. And I teach free monthly webinars. And the archives of those are on my websites, and they're like 20 to 30 minutes on different topics, but there's several recent ones about ed tech. So especially including one with an attorney at the Ed Tech Law Center, and she walks parents through sort of like some of the legality part of it. Like, she's an amazing resource too. So if you're kind of going down that first fish path, that could be a great resource as well. So
amazing. Awesome. Yeah, we'll link all of that.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for this work, because I think in so many ways you're first fish helping like second fish like me, or third fish, come behind you. And I think you're right. We're so bombarded with so much information that it's really refreshing to be like, hey, this is what's going on. And here are some like really practical, shame-free ways that you can advocate for your kids and make sure that they're using tech intentionally, which is your whole basis. So just thanks for being with us. Thanks for the work that you're doing in this space. So grateful to spend this time together.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Michelle.